Hello and welcome. Please take a seat, get cozy, and enjoy a cup of terror with me, Stefanie Valentine. Hello, my spooky little pumpkins. Thank you for coming back to join me once more. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for being here. A Cup of Terror is a series where I talk about true crime cases that have a dash of the strange, be that supernatural or to do with the occult or just something downright odd. Now, we're still outside at the moment, as you can see, and in the daylight, my eyes, my skin. The sun is not good for us vampires, but it's okay though. I think the sun is setting, so we're safe now. I'm okay. Okay, that's the drama over with. Let's get on with today's video. So this is kind of a part two to the previous episode. So we talked about the monster of Glamis last time, and that was more of a mystery. But Glamis Castle is not just associated with mystery, it's also associated with ghosts, monsters and murders. And I'm going to talk about a few of them today and tell you about some of the strange and weird events that have happened at the castle. The first tale I'm going to talk about is that of the tongueless woman of Glamis Castle, also known as the Weeping Woman. She is one of the more well-known ghosts that are said to roam the place. We don't really know much about her or her life, sadly, who this mysterious woman was, or anything much about her, really. It is said that sometime back in the 19th century, a guest was staying at Glamis Castle. Late one night, he was standing at the window, looking out, when he noticed someone looking back at him from a window opposite. Now, this face was very white, very pale, with large, sad eyes. And then suddenly, the face just disappeared, gone. All of a sudden, screams were heard throughout the castle. Horrible, blood-curdling screams. The guest was shaken up by what he had seen and heard, and he looked out of the window again. He didn't see a face, but he did see, down in the courtyard below, what looked like an old woman bent over with what appeared to be a large sack or a bag on her back. She walked into the darkness with this big bundle on her back. Years later, this person was travelling through Italy and he happened to visit a monastery. He was told about how there was a woman who lived at a nearby nunnery, and she had apparently worked at a great house in Scotland. But this poor woman had had her tongue and her hands removed to prevent her from revealing a terrible secret. He didn't meet this woman, but he instantly thought of Glamis Castle when he heard the story. There are many who believe that the ghostly face seen in the window belonged to a servant who had unfortunately stumbled across a crime or a secret known only to the Earl. When she threatened to expose this secret, the Earl ordered guards to cut out her tongue to silence her. There is also a version of the tale which says that her hands were also chopped off. Quite a few people, including the staff at the castle, they have claimed to have seen the pale face staring out of a window, and she's also been seen wandering the grounds, pointing to her face, blood spilling from her mouth. Very chilling. Another woman said to haunt the castle is the Grey Lady, sometimes known as the White Lady. She was believed to be Janet Douglas, Lady Glamis. She was accused of poisoning her husband, John Lyon, 6th Lord Glamis, who had died on the 17th of September 1528. She was cleared though, and she went on to marry her second husband, Archibald Campbell of Skipness. Now, the king at the time, King James V of Scotland, he never liked Janet. Her brother, Archibald Douglas, 6th Earl of Angus, was the king's stepfather, and young James did not like him. He saw him as the wicked stepfather. When James became king, he had a vendetta not just against his stepfather, but the entire Douglas family, including Janet, who'd had nothing to do with him really, other than being related to his stepdad. In July 1537, she was accused of planning to poison King James and was accused of being involved with her brothers, who were part of several conspiracies against the king. The king also accused her of witchcraft and of attempting to use witchcraft against him. It was very clear that the allegations were false, but nevertheless, the king still had Janet arrested. She was imprisoned in Edinburgh Castle dungeon with her husband. King James, he didn't really have any evidence to convict her with, so in order to find some evidence, he resorted to the tried and tested method often used during those times of the witchcraft trials: torture. And it was Janet's family members and servants that unfortunately were subjected to the torture. Janet ended up being convicted, and she was burned at the stake on the 17th of July 1537 at Castle Hill by Edinburgh Castle. Janet's husband, he tried to escape from the castle dungeon the night after Janet's execution, but unfortunately he ended up falling to his death on the rocks. Janet Douglas is said to be the Grey Lady of Glamis Castle and is said to haunt the family chapel and the clock tower. She was sometimes seen floating above the clock tower with an eerie red glow surrounding her. She's also been seen kneeling and praying at the altar of the chapel. There is actually a seat in the chapel that is still reserved for Janet, and even though the chapel is still used regularly, no one is allowed to sit in the seat reserved for Lady Janet. Now, the next ghostly story I'm going to tell you about is not actually a person, but a cup. Yes, a haunted cup. It's called the Lion Cup, and it is made of silver and it's in the shape of a lion. So, Lion Cup, that makes sense. Now, it's quite big. It holds nearly a whole bottle of wine, and visitors were often made to drain the cup in one go before they left the building, accustomed to drink to the Earl's health, from what I can tell. Sir Walter Scott, who I mentioned in the last episode, he too was made to join in with the custom of drinking from the cup, and he was pretty sozzled when he left, and he lost his way on the road and needed help from some locals in getting him going in the right direction. This cup is said to have brought many, many years of bad luck to the castle and its family. No one really knows where the cup came from, though, or the origin of the legend. Sir Walter Scott wrote about the cup, and he wrote about drinking from it, but he didn't mention any dark legends or superstitions attached to it. So, was it made up after his stay at the castle? It has been said that if the cup were to ever be parted with or lost, extinction awaits the family. So yeah, I can see why they haven't got rid of it, even though it apparently brings them bad luck. The Lion Cup is still at the castle. I think you can see it if you go to visit the castle. Go and see the cup. So that sounds really interesting. Now we're going to move on to one of the more infamous ghosts of Glamis Castle, Earl Beardy, Alexander Lindsay, 4th Earl of Crawford, also known as Earl Beardy. Now, this guy was horrible from all accounts. He drank a lot, he gambled a lot, he was said to be very cruel. I mean, one time it's alleged that he once made a black servant strip naked and forced him to run around in his grounds for the Earl and other Earls' entertainment. It actually turned out to be a hunt, and this poor servant was hunted, chased down by Earl Beardy, his guests, and their hunting dogs. He was caught and torn apart. I told you he's a terrible person. Now, this legend says that the Earl was visiting the castle, and on the Saturday night he was playing cards. Suddenly his friend wanted to stop because it was nearing midnight, and playing cards on the Sabbath was sacrilege. His friend and the servants refused to play with him, and he got into a drunken rage. He said that he would continue playing even if it is with the devil himself. On the stroke of midnight, a tall man dressed in black walked into the room and offered to play cards with Beardy. The two men went into a room and shut the door. A short time later, a servant heard some strange noises and shouting and swearing coming from the room. He went to see what was going on, and there he saw Earl Beardy engulfed in flames. The tall man that he had been playing cards with was actually the devil himself, and Beardy lost his soul in a game of cards and was condemned to play until doomsday for daring to play cards on the Sabbath. Beardy can still be heard shouting, swearing and rattling dice behind closed doors. Stomping feet, banging doors and swearing have also been reported to come from the west tower of the castle, the alleged site of the fateful card game. There have also been reports of guests and residents spotting a bearded man wandering through the castle, and some people have even woken up to a dark figure looming over them in bed. I don't know if I feel that sorry for him. Earl Beardy sounds like a horrible man, like I said, and also of all the things that you'd have to do until doomsday, playing cards doesn't sound too bad really. I mean, you know, it's not like he had to clean toilets or work in a shop serving customers forevermore. Now that would be hellish. I'm going to now tell you about the Ogilvy clan. This legend dates back to 1486. The Ogilvy clan is a Scottish Highlands clan, also from Angus, the same area as Glamis Castle. This clan were attempting to hide from their enemy, the Lindsay clan, and they sought shelter at Glamis Castle. Lord Glamis welcomed them in, and he hid them in a secret chamber. But what the Ogilvies didn't know was that Lord Glamis was actually good friends with the Lindsays. He locked them in the chamber and he left them there to slowly die without any food or drink. Years later, strange noises started coming from the locked chamber, which by then had been walled up. The room was broken into and it was investigated. What they found shocked them. Piles of skeletons lay twisted and contorted in agony. Some were even said to have died in the act of eating the flesh of their relatives. Even today, people often say that that chamber gives off some really weird and uneasy vibes. Not surprising after what allegedly happened there. There are those that believe that this story strongly inspired the legend of the monster of Glamis, which I talked about last time. They're certainly very similar, both stories involving people being locked away in a secret chamber. Now, I love this story that I'm going to tell you about now. There was an anonymous account from 1882 which tells of a doctor who visited the castle. He was in his room one evening when a man burst in, and he said that a Miss Seymour was ill in the parlour and she needed some medical attention right now. He went downstairs and he found a young woman unconscious in an armchair. The doctor revived her, but the man who had gone to get him, he suddenly exclaimed, "Is that the way in which you doctors treat your patients? I will show you how I cure them." And then he drew out a knife and he stabbed the woman in the chest. All of a sudden, the murderer and the victim vanished right in front of the doctor. He was shocked and bewildered, so confused. He examined the chair and the room, but he found nothing. Later on, he asked his host if a Miss Seymour was staying there, and she was. The doctor went to see her, but she didn't recognise him. Thankfully, the man that he had seen in his vision wasn't there. 2 years later, the doctor was at a country house party in England, and he bumped into Miss Seymour again. This time she introduced him to someone, and it was the man that she was going to marry. The man that the doctor had witnessed stabbing her at Glamis Castle. And then the story ends there. Cliffhanger. So we don't know what happened or if anything happened. I mean, you know, it might not even be true, but spooky. I really love that story. So interesting. So to finish off the video, I'm going to tell you about a couple of the smaller ghost stories. They don't really have much information about them, but they are equally as fascinating. First of all, there was a supposed vampire. A maid was apparently caught drinking the blood of a man, and as punishment, she was walled up alive. Her spirit still roams the area in search of fresh victims. 4 servants were caught drinking and gambling, and they were put to death. They return on the anniversary of their death, and they like to cause a whole bunch of noise, screaming really loudly and terrifying everybody in the castle. Apparently, in the crypt, there are a few figures of armour. One of these suits of armour reportedly walks up and down the chamber every night. There is a little African boy who was a page boy, a young servant. He was mistreated when he was alive in the middle of the 18th century. His ghost rather enjoys getting up to mischief, and he was regularly witnessed sitting by the door of the Queen Mother's bedroom. He is said to trip up passers-by as they walk by, and people who have slept in the small dressing room off the main bedroom have often felt their bedclothes being pulled off. So, that is today's video. There is a lot of supernatural and spooky activity linked to this castle. I didn't even talk about all of the other sightings and stories that there have been. Apparently the castle is trying to step away, kind of trying to distance itself from its ghostly past. I guess it's trying to cater to the wedding and functions sort of people. I can't imagine too many of them would want to get married with creepy ghosts lurking about. I mean, that sounds amazing to me, but not everyone is like us, are they? I would love to visit the castle sometime in the future, see if I can encounter any of these ghosties. I think that would be pretty cool. So, thank you for hanging out with me today, and if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and join me next time for another Cup of Terror.